Tech Gang, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, where have you been all this time? I am back with a brand new video, and today I am going to share with you guys my top 10 foolproof tips and tricks to finding an affordable and great apartment in New York City. And I'm going to share all the secrets and tricks and tips that landlords do not want you to know. I've been living in New York City for nearly a decade at this point. I have been renting and subleasing apartments for about 10 years now, and I've made a ton of mistakes. I was definitely tricked into moving into a couple of apartments thinking that they were great when they really weren't, and I made all the mistakes so that you don't have to do the same thing I did. Number one tip is don't start looking too early. And the reason I say that is because if you start looking too early, you're gonna get your hopes up about a specific apartment and it's gonna be off the market like the next day. Apartments always fly off the shelf so quickly, like toilet paper in 2020. You think you found something, and as you're filling out the applications, somebody else is already moving their couch in. And you're like how? Why? I don't know. I'll be honest with you, this is so scary because I love planning things, but I typically started looking for apartments maybe about 2 weeks before moving into them. You kind of just want to hit that 2-week mark. Unless you're like, living it up and you've got like an awesome salary and a better life than most of us. Unless you're like looking to buy a condo, which is a whole nother game. Like if you're actually buying an apartment, wrong video. But if you're renting an apartment, don't start looking until it's about 2 weeks before you move. Like you can look, you can browse around and get a good idea of what area maybe you want to be in, but if you start looking too early, you're gonna get your hopes up because a landlord will more often than not take somebody who's looking to move in immediately over somebody who has maybe a little bit higher of a credit score but needs a month to move in. Like, that's just how it works. Number two, manage your expectations. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. New York City is kind of known for renting out apartments the size of shoe boxes for the price of a Louis Vuitton purse every week. Manage your expectations a little bit. I'm not saying settle, because unless you're really in a pinch, you shouldn't have to settle. There are good apartments out there and they are hard to come by, but I'm definitely gonna show you how to find them. I usually write a list of 5 things, my top 5 things that I'm looking for in an apartment. An example of some of those things are natural light, high ceilings, dishwasher, outdoor space, washer dryer. Imagine having all those things in an apartment in New York City. That's like fudging crazy. It doesn't happen, but it does, and it can. Very rarely. I will get to that at the end of the video and show you how you can maybe possibly have all of those things, but not likely. Sometimes, you're lucky if you move into an apartment and it has windows. That's the unfortunate truth of living in New York. So take that list of 5 things and narrow it down to your top 3. The 3 most important things to you. For me, it was close to the train, natural light, and washer dryer. Take your top 5, narrow it down to the most important 3, and you're more likely to find something in the realm of that. Number 3, look when the market is down. Like, for example, during, a global pandemic, the market always goes down. I want to say somewhere around like November, December into February, March, and then it goes back up again. Why does that happen? Think about it like this. People graduate from college, people move into the city looking for jobs somewhere around like spring, summer, fall. Students are all moving back into the city during the fall, so apartment prices go way up. Plus, nobody really wants to move when it is freezing outside. It's just less desirable. And because of that, sometimes it's hard for landlords to fill apartments whose leases ended in the winter. So winter months, rent goes down. It's science. It's scientifically proven. Discovery Channel said so. I didn't say that. Don't sue me. But yeah, that's factual. Look during times when the market is down and try to sign yourself onto like a 2-year lease. Thank me later. Number 4, if it looks too good to be true, that's because it's too good to be true. And I'll give you a good example of that. At one point, I was looking at this apartment and it was the entire top floor of a brownstone. It had 4 bedrooms, it had 2 bathrooms, it had beautiful natural light, 2 fireplaces with mantles, wood floors, high ceilings, crown molding. Like, it was like Eden Kitchen, come on. It was gorge. And I'm thinking, why is it only $2,000 a month? It's in Bed-Stuy. Why is that? Why the thing? I went and toured it. As I was touring it, people were actively moving out of it. They were there for 1 week and they somehow were able to terminate their lease within a week of living there, but they weren't opening their mouths about anything. They were just like, oh, we have a house now upstate we're gonna go live in. And I'm like, do you know how much money it costs to break a lease? Like, there's no way. So I did a bit of research and I found out that the building was infested with rats. They had an insufferable pest problem that they could not get under control. That is why it was so beautiful and so affordable, which leads me to my next tip. Number 5, look up the history of your building, and not just the history, like this building was built in 1899. No. There's a website, and I'm gonna link it below, and you can actually check all of the 311 calls that have been placed on your building and what unit they were placed on, what year it was, and when that problem or how that problem was resolved. That's how I was able to find out that there was a huge rodent problem in the building I was about to move into. Look up the history of the building. See if there's anything like really crazy. Some big red flags to look out for. Gas leaks. Building things without a permit, like gut renovating a basement apartment per se. Like a duplex with a basement. Those are notorious for leaking and just being so damaged. You can look up all of these complaints and see if and how they were resolved and move forward cautiously. Whole nother tip and trick, like this is just like not really gonna be on my list, but try to avoid living in a basement apartment or a duplex because Brooklyn particularly is notably a huge flood area. And there's also just like this weird level of moisture that just collects, and there's a lot of problems with basement apartments, especially in Brooklyn. I would try to avoid them. I have had terrible experiences living in duplexes. Every one of them that I've ever lived in flooded multiple times, so don't do that to yourself. Number 6, if you're not loaded and you don't make 40 times the rent annually and you don't have guarantors, look for a roommate. I know a lot of people don't want to live with a roommate. I get it. I lived with roommates for like 7-8 years. Sometimes it's awesome. Sometimes it's the worst. But you can use certain websites like Nooklin or Roomie to help find a roommate that you'd be compatible with. But if you don't make all that money and you don't have parents that make all that money, it might be worth looking for a roommate. Otherwise, you're potentially gonna end up subletting an apartment somewhere or just like renting a room off of somebody, which is subletting. So yeah, I mean, it might be worth it. It might be worth actually looking for a roommate. You can definitely find somebody that you're compatible with. You can find a place that has enough space for 2 people or more, and you'll be happy that way, and you'll get your apartment. Also, prepare your finances. In addition to typically what you can expect to pay when you're moving in to an apartment in New York is you're gonna pay first and last month rent, and you're probably gonna pay a deposit. And if you're not looking for an apartment that doesn't have a broker's fee, you're probably also gonna end up paying a broker's fee. Number 7, set up multiple apartment tours. In alignment with don't start looking too early because apartments are just gonna like fly off the shelves. You're gonna need to look at more than likely more than one apartment. Don't get your heart set on one place because it could be gone in an hour. Like, you don't know how many people are actually currently applying for it. So keep your mind open and look at things. Sometimes the pictures are not as good as the real thing. And sometimes the real thing is not as good as the pictures. So keep your options open. Look at a couple different places. Give yourself some options and a little bit of leeway when you're looking for an apartment so that you don't end up with none. Number 8, look up the exact location of the apartment. Like, look up the exact location, not just like, oh, it's in Bed-Stuy. Great. Oh, it's in the Lower East Side. Awesome. Like, no, like look up the building number, look up everything. I was just going through the apartment finding process again like 2 months ago, and I applied for an apartment and this woman reached out to me. She gave me the exact address. It turns out it was on like the top floor of a hotel. And when I reached out to her and I was like, this is a hotel? And she was like, it's residential too though. I was like, she's after my spleen. She's after my kidney. Just look where it is. If it feels off, it's off. Number 9, bargain. You can more often than not talk a private landlord down from their monthly rent price. And there are several ways that you can do that. Some key points you can bring up when trying to bargain down that price are: is there construction going on? Is there scaffolding outside? Is there a lot of noisy construction in or around the building? That can be a key factor in helping lower your monthly rent a little bit. Is the building completed? Are there all of the amenities available currently? That could be another good key indicator of whether they would bring the rent down or not. Is it a really high walk up and they don't have an elevator? Several ways and different things that you can kind of bring up to help bring that rent a little bit down. Another thing that I've done in the past is offer to sign a 2-year lease for like $50 less every month. And that adds up at the end. Another thing you could do is offer, if you have it on you, you can offer to pay 6 months of rent up front and in return have, $100 off your rent or $50 off the rent every month. So bargaining, it can help and it works. I've bargained down every single private landlord, private owned apartment that I've ever lived in. I don't think I would want to do it any other way. If it's not private, less likely to work out in your favor, but it's always worth a shot. Number 10, my personal favorite and the best kept secret in New York City that nobody wants to tell you about, that no landlords want to tell you about, and that all New Yorkers want to gatekeep. And I know why. New York City lottery housing. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's essentially winning the lottery of housing in New York City. There's a website, and I'm gonna link it below. And most new buildings that go up in New York City need to set aside a certain percentage of units to lower or middle income people. Thank you, New York City, for doing one thing right. In this circumstance, if you're gonna start applying to lottery housing, start 5 to 6 months in advance. So a lot of these buildings that are gonna be up for grabs are still 5 months away from moving in. Apply for lottery housing. I know several people who have great success stories with lottery housing. If you win, let's say there's like a 22-story high-rise that goes up and they set aside 40 units for middle or lower income people. Even if you're 1 out of 15,000 people that apply, half of those people end up finding an apartment in the meantime, half of them end up dropping out, some of them forget, some of them change their plans. You definitely have a chance. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 tips and tricks to finding a great, beautiful, and affordable apartment somewhere in New York City. It is possible. Do not give up hope. Keep searching. You will find what you're looking for. Don't settle. Be smart. Oh! This is just a bonus tip, okay? Here's a bonus tip. Never pay anybody money unless you are sitting there exchanging keys and moving in. Never send someone money. So many people get scammed. When I was looking for apartments, I've had people being like,
okay, well, there's a bunch of other people that are interested in the apartment. If you send me $500 now, I'll hold it for you.
No. Other times there will be people who take you on a tour of the apartment and they're like, okay, it's gonna be an $80 application fee and then we'll let you know if it works out. And then they call you and they're like, sorry, it didn't work out. Sometimes those are people who are scamming you, saying the apartment is less money than what it actually is, and they'll take you on a tour and then they'll lie to you about some kind of crazy fee and you'll pay it thinking you're actually applying for the apartment when really you're just putting $80 in their pocket, and they know that you're not gonna get the apartment because you can't afford it because it's more money than what they're actually telling you it is. So really do your research on these apartments and on these units. Make sure what you're looking at is what you're getting, essentially. Do a little bit of extra research. Some of my favorite apartment finding websites are Nooklin, super reliable, very trustworthy. Street Easy, depends on who you kind of end up with, like that, it's a hit or miss. And then there's Facebook. Facebook is actually not so bad, like Gypsy Housing. There's a bunch of Facebook groups where you can kind of help navigate finding an apartment in New York City without having to go to a real estate agent and paying a broker. Those are my tips and tricks. Let me know if you like this video below. Let me know what some of your tips and tricks are, or if you've ever had any bad experiences, because I would love to hear about it and I would love to learn about it. The more you know, the better. Thank you guys so much for watching my video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.